Good evening. Thank you for coming early. I think you're going to be richly rewarded. My name is Christa Wessel, and I'm the morning host at All Classical Portland, which is 89.9. Why am I telling that? You know that already, right? With me today, I'm so delighted. This is one of the most charming young musicians you'll ever meet. He's a percussionist in the Symphony. His name is Sergio Carreño.
Hello. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Great.
It's interesting to have a percussionist do these because they play such a vast array of instruments back here. Nobody else in the orchestra does that. They have their violin, they have their bassoon. You play, I mean, I would have to count, probably a couple of dozen instruments, all told, right?
Kind of infinite, actually, literally. Basically anything we can find to strike or whatever becomes our instrument. We have a great case of that to show that off for the kids, the elementary concerts we have coming up in the next few days. Neil DuPont, our principal, and myself are playing a piece by Steve Reich called Clapping Music. That's just literally us clapping in rhythm for like 3 or 4 minutes, and it creates a wonderful piece of music just using our hands. You know, it's a great example of how extensive our thing can be. And of course, we have our standard setup, which we'll get into in a minute, but also, you know, there's sometimes I don't know if any of you saw sometime in the first part of the season a piece by Thomas Otis called The Scylla, and we had to play, I don't know, a bag of knives and forks and a washboard, and I had a setup that was 2.5 octaves of tuned cowbells. I saw the part, I'm like, really? Oh, God. Really? I've never practiced. You know, so we have to be very creative, not only in, you know, how we play our given instruments, our standard stuff, but sometimes we get things that require us to just be very creative in even how we structure the instrument physically. Like the tuned cowbell thing, I had to figure out how to set it up in the way that I can play it. So I invented my own setup of an instrument that a wonderful composer just had to have happen. He was like, I want it to be on cowbells, not marimba, not vibraphone, cowbells. But you know what? It worked. It was phenomenal. But we have a lot of fun because of that. We have to be constantly pushed in our creativity. The percussion universe is so new in this idiom, even though it's one of the most ancient forms of music making is drumming. Aside from the human voice, people started drumming and dancing way, 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 way before there was any other instrument. So it's an interesting dichotomy. We're some of the most ancient people as far as drummers in the world, but in the orchestral world, we are some of the newest versions of soundscaping that exists. You know, so it's really cool. It's really fun. A lot of fun. I'm very lucky. Very lucky.
Well, let me ask you about some of those new instruments, and well, going back to what I said at the beginning, in that a violinist just plays a violin, a bassoonist, so on, but you play such a myriad of instruments. When you audition for a position in an orchestra like this, how many instruments do you have to perform on? How many instruments do you have to demonstrate for the panel?
Let's count it. We have the snare drum, the xylophone, the glockenspiel, marimba, vibraphone, concert bass drum, cymbals, tambourine, and even the triangle, if you can believe that. And then in my case here for this orchestra, I had to play drum set also. There was a special little round for drum set playing and timpani for my particular position here, which isn't typical for a percussion audition. So we had to add those 2 lists also. And sometimes you get like castanet gets thrown on the list, you know, for an audition. So yeah, even the flexitone, that happened once.
What is that? Wait.
Flexitone. Why am I even getting into this? It's kind of an imitation of a tune or a playing of a saw. Have you ever seen that? Like bending saw? And Khachaturian, in one of his piano concertos, writes a beautifully haunting melody for the flexitone or the saw. And so it's an interesting instrument that has a sheet of metal that's small that you bend with your thumb, and it has 2 little mallet implements attached to the metal that hit it when you shake it back and forth, and it kind of hits it on both sides, on either side of the metal plate. And as you bend it, you push the plate with your thumb, it bends the pitch. And so actually you have to figure out how to, yeah.
Because you can't study that in school. I mean, like.
Yeah, not much.
But going back, you said so on auditions you have to play the triangle. Can you tell me what's complicated about playing the triangle? What are they judging you on? I'm sorry to
don't be
disparage
This
the
is
triangle.
a great question. Everyone's like, oh, I can do that. I can crash the cymbals. Everyone can do that. The triangle's actually not that easy to do right, to do it correctly. In other words, to play it in a way that you might not even notice it. We choose the correct instrument with the correct implement, using the correct touch. You might not notice because it fits the texture so well. For example, you notice when a cake has too much frosting. You notice when a pizza has too much sauce versus there's a lack of balance in things. Or, there's a bunch of examples. But it's similar to that. You have to have the right touch with the right instrument. So that takes a lot of work, actually. I sat there and practiced triangle for many hours in a small practice room. Cymbals is the same way. I used to play, 300 crashes a day when I was in school for months, just figuring out how to crash the cymbals in a consistent manner. Short crashes, long crashes. I even heard a conductor once say, "Can you play an ironic cymbal crash?" Okay, but you figure it out. You have to put in the time because we have got to be able to manipulate all the sounds we make with our instruments in sometimes really esoteric ways. Can that be more legato? And I'm playing the xylophone. It's like, what? It's a piece of wood. It doesn't ring, but he wants it more legato, or she might want it longer sound. So you got to be able to manipulate a lot of things with the things we do. We like to call that touch. So, if somebody has good touch on an instrument, it's very noticeable. They can change the color, the length of a note on a material that doesn't ring, for example. It's almost magical, actually. It's really cool. But it requires a lot of time spent. I played the triangle for a long time. Too long. I don't know if I'm right up here. I don't know. But it's fun. And I love playing the triangle. I do. It can be very, very fun, actually. Some great parts out there. It's fun.
We say great fun.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever noticed Sergio in the back of the orchestra. He, to me, seems like he is having the most fun of anybody on stage. You're back there bobbing your head. You're always having a good time. It's so delightful to watch.
I mean, this music's so wonderful. I don't know how people can not move when we're playing some. Oh, man, tonight you'll see. I'm only playing in the last piece tonight, the Symphonic Metamorphosis, and the second movement is some of the coolest groove that you can hear in the repertoire at all. I mean, just really great playing, and I'm probably going to be rocking out with that. And my buddy John, the timpanist here, has an awesome solo with the brass. That's super.
Did you just
super
do
cool.
that?
A little bit. Anybody? It's in there. I don't know. But you're probably going to see my head bob, and I'll probably be smiling too. I can't help it. It's it's wonderful. It's just it captures you. How can you not move?
And you're in a fortunate position, well, fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it. Most of the rest of the orchestra, the violins, they've got their heads buried in the music. It's hard for them to move around. But
that's what I mean. Like, as a listener, I'm speaking, when I have the luxury, actually, of when I'm not stressing out over my 3 crash cymbal notes that have to be perfect every time. I have all this time before and after that I get to enjoy the music, assuming I've studied it well enough to enjoy it, because if I have to just worry about my counting the measures, I don't get the opportunity to enjoy it either. But the goal is, when I study my music, is to know it so well that I can let go a little bit in terms of I can enjoy the music and still be a part of the group because I've studied it so much that I get to jam out when it's cool. It's just like, yeah, man, that's such a great groove, And so you'll probably see a little bit of that tonight in that last piece for sure. And, the classic, man, there's so much groove in Mozart and Beethoven. It's strange. And, I started, you asked me this last time, actually. I started playing music when I was maybe 11, if you can call it music, because it was playing on my mother's couch. And it was imitating the music of Metallica. It was so much fun. It was just this, it was all about this drum set playing, this heavy metal drum set playing, and I was obsessed with it. And I used, for my drumsticks, I had 2 recorders that we used to play Mary Had a Little Lamb in elementary school. And I had 2 of them for whatever reason, but I looked at them one day in the corner of my room, and I'm like, those look like drumsticks, not recorders. And the couch was perfect because you had 4 pillows. This, I guess it was what do you call those? The two-seated ones, the love seat?
Love seat.
Love seat. And so it had 4 pillows, which a basic drum set has 4 drums, the snare drum, tom, 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 floor tom. And then I would just stomp on the floor for my bass drum. And I would literally, just practice for hours and found all this, just connected with the groove aspect, the playing these fun rhythms. Later on, when I got captured by this music, when I was in high school, in fact, side note, I didn't say this last time either. The first time I played the Symphonic Metamorphosis, I was in high school band. There's a concert band arrangement for it. And we played the final movement of it for a state festival even or something. And so anyway, I got introduced to all this music through high school band. And I was very fortunate to go to a great one. But I started noticing this amazing rhythm and groove, and throw that in with the incredible harmonies, and it was just like, God, oh my God, this music's incredible, So at heart, I'm very much the rock and roll drummer, still here, but applying it to this music and getting to discover how, for example, Hindemith, or you'll hear Beethoven, or even the list, there's just so much fun in there. There's so much fun if you just can get in there. So I am very guilty of rocking out in the back.
It's charming. Do not stop.
I got called out on it once, I think, but it was like, what are you doing back there? I'm like, oh, just having fun. What are you doing? Not having fun? You need to have more fun when you play. But it's fun. What are you going to do?
If you've just come in, this delightful young man is Sergio Carreño. He's one of the percussionists of the Oregon Symphony. And I hope to, in a few minutes, perhaps open this up for questions. So if you have questions about specific percussion instruments or what it's like to play in the symphony or personal things about Sergio, prepare your questions and I'll be around in a little bit. One of the questions that came up after our chat on Saturday I thought was interesting. Somebody wanted to know how many of those instruments on stage, there are a lot of them, are owned by you personally? How many are owned by the symphony? Does that number change? Do you have all of this stuff at home in your own personal studio?
That's a great question. Yes, all this stuff is something we need as practitioners of our craft to be able to work on at home. So we all have mallet instruments, and it takes time to accumulate all this stuff, and I'm still constantly buying. I just discovered the drum store Rhythm Traders on the east side, and I'm just getting in trouble, just going there once a week, like, oh, I need that cymbal, I need this thing, but yeah, so it's a process that's forever, you just collect. So I have my own snare drums, and there's a vibraphone at home, and drum set, and blah, blah, blah. But what we have back here is a mix of instruments that the orchestra owns and our own personal thing. For example, if I'm playing the snare drum for whatever piece, I'm probably going to bring in my drum, assuming it's appropriate for that character and that style. I'll bring in one of my 6 snare drums, that I might choose to use for that piece. Or if you saw recently Beethoven 9, I was playing triangle. I used 2 different ones, and those were both mine triangles. Tonight, our new percussionist. I'm no longer the new guy. We have our latest installment to the team coming in. He's playing the Liszt piano concerto cymbal part by himself tonight. So when you see that guy in the back, he's our new guy.
His name is Mark.
Mike Roberts.
He's so new,
Michael
I don't even know
Roberts,
you.
he's that new. So he's using one of my pair of cymbals for the first entrance he has, and then he has his own pair of cymbals that are his own that he's using later on. So we do use a combination of things. But the bass drum, the concert bass drum, which I'll be playing in the Hindemith, is the orchestra's, and the xylophone we have is the orchestra's, and the glockenspiel we use, and the chimes and all that stuff belongs to the symphony. So it depends on what, and the symphony has some snare drums that are great that we might use, and cymbals that are great that are the orchestra's that I might choose to use also, based off of what I would like, or the principal would like, or the conductor would like.
But at home you said 6 snare drums, 18 tambourines?
Something like that. Yeah, it's just, it's like, my chest toy. Toy chest? That's what it is, toy chest. They're just everywhere. So yeah, we do have, if you go into John Greeny's house, his basement, I like to go over there a lot and hang out.
He's the timpanist.
He's a timpanist, and he has just a whole studio set up downstairs, recording equipment and everything too, electric drum set, acoustic drum set, And so he has his own set of timpani down there. Yeah, we have fun. We have a good time. We just drum all day long. It's pretty cool.
Both of you are big Metallica fans, as I recall.
Yeah. I just sent him an email last night at 1 a.m. of this metal group playing Bach toccata to heavy metal riffs. And I send it to, I'm like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. I send it to John, and he emailed me back at like 2 in the morning also. He's like, oh my God. We just like watch music all the time. And then I'll go over his house and we'll just watch Metallica videos and reminisce on our youth. And then how can we apply it tonight? Like he will. You'll see his timpani solo in the second movement of the Hindemith. It's pretty rocking, actually. You'll see a little bit of headbanging probably when he's playing it, you know. It's just, so it's fun. We can bring it to the table. I mean, this music has sometimes as much or more energy than some of that music. So
aren't you glad you came tonight?
I am.
I want to ask you a quick question about auditions, because you just mentioned that Mike Roberts is the newest hire. He's only been here for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long that you auditioned yourself.
Yes.
So you have these recent memories of being behind that screen and performing, sweat dripping down your brow. And
Don't
suddenly,
remind me.
within the last month or so, you were on the judging side of that audition. So kind of an interesting experience, both sides.
That really is an unbelievable experience. I can't believe, that's rare. That doesn't happen often, that you might win an audition and within a 6-month period, you're on the other side judging people, you know. But, so I don't know who here knows the process or not, but when we audition, for example, in my case, there was, I think, 70 candidates that came. There were over 100 that applied. We didn't take that many because we're restricted by time, so you have to choose, be very selective. And there are, I think, a little over 70 people, I believe. And that gets, everyone plays a first round, a preliminary round. That gets whittled down to about 10 to 15 for a second round. That gets whittled down to about 3 to 5. In my case, it was 4 people for the final round. Now, the committee does not know who you are, what your name is, where you come from, how old you are. It doesn't matter. You are a number. Your candidate number so-and-so, and you're behind a screen, so the committee can't see you. All they do is hear you. That's it. And so as a candidate, as it was for so many years for myself, God, the things I imagine happening behind that screen, it's like monstrous. You know, these salivating monsters just waiting to cut you, like waiting for that mistake. And so you mess with yourself mentally so much with these auditions. You know, you just don't know, like, my God, what are they doing back there? It's freaking me out. You know, like, it's part of the mental game. And that's something that we have to learn, you know, to be able to perform in that kind of stress. Because, hey, that's what we do every week. We're under the microscope every day at rehearsal with our conductor. You know, our boss is, like, right there every day. So it's it can be a very stressful thing, but you learn to cope with that stuff. And the audition process kind of teaches you how to do that in a very extreme way. What was interesting is when I got to be a part of the committee this past season when we hired Michael, and it was so different than I thought it was. I wasn't a monster, you know. I didn't grow talons and beady red eyes, and I wasn't like ready to kill somebody. And I was like hoping that everyone that came out blew me away. I was just like, come on, let you be that person that I want to hire, you know, and we all felt that way. And so really the people behind the committee are your biggest cheerleaders. They root for everything. Like, come on, you know, let's step it up. Let's hope that this person really does well, you know. So that was a really, really interesting experience for me. I learned a ton from that. That was really great. Really fun.
My assumption is everybody who is invited to come audition, they can play the snare drum, they can crash a cymbal. Like, what differentiates somebody who was in that, you know, the group of 70, from the one who's in the group of 4 finalists, from the guy who won the job?
So there's, in the percussion audition world, there's some interesting facts about it, such as you might learn how to crash cymbals pretty well. The thing is, when you walk in that day for that round, you're not playing cymbals you've ever seen before, because you're using the orchestras in this case. Or the xylophone is an instrument that, you know, you practice a xylophone, but it's very different when we play it for the audition, because it's not an instrument you've ever seen before. So that's an interesting little facet. You got to walk up blind to this instrument, and, you know, first time you're looking at it, and that could really mess with your targeting for accuracy. You know, if you're used to a certain color even of the wood that's on the bar, and suddenly it's darker or lighter, it throws your whole like aesthetic off, which is, you know, very interesting. You have to have a really, really strong mind to stay focused and not let those things throw you off. So that said, yeah, most people that can play are actually really well trained and work very hard and, you know, all these things. But it's funny, you know, at the end of the day, it's the person that, or the people, there's always a few that make it very difficult to choose a winner, but the people that end up playing just simply everything you see on the music as a committee member, you're looking at this excerpt that we've asked to play, and the person that can play all the notes that we see in a very simplistic manner. In other words, you're not rushing the time, you're not pushing the time. The dynamics that are written, your soft dynamics, your loud dynamics, are all being played just how, and that simplicity can be very difficult to achieve because this person's super nervous. I can remember taking auditions, my hands would just start shaking, and you know how difficult it can be when your hands are shaking. Try to picture a neurosurgeon going in with a scalpel looking like this. I mean, that's not a good feeling. When I have to play bolero on the snare drum, it's super delicate and refined, and my hands are doing this. Oh my God! And it ends up sounding like a Brazilian samba, not like I'm like, oh my God. So that can be a very difficult thing to just play simply in time, and then on top of that, when we whittle it down to a few people that they can do that well, then who expresses some emotion or who makes us feel a certain way? Like, can Shostakovich 10 snare drum part be really exciting, just like that symphony is, even though it's just one person, not 100 people playing? Can the Tchaikovsky Symphony No. 4 cymbal part at the end be just super passionate like that music is? So then we get into this, like, who we pick as a winner is a person that maybe affected us emotionally, just like how that's our job to do to you guys. Hopefully you get goosebumps when you hear us play, or you get some tears, or you're smiling, or you feel angry or happy, then we're doing our job. Or fall asleep because it's so relaxing, then, we're doing our job. So a person that can actually do that by themselves on stage while we're all just staring at them, and they can still come back and play something that's super emotional and great in the later stages, in the final rounds. That's the person usually that'll get the job.
I would hire the person that could bring me to tears just by playing the triangle. I mean, that's pretty special.
I mean, I'm pretty messed up from practicing, but if somebody's crying because of that, I don't know. They need to be checked too, man. I don't know. I mean, I can play some beautiful triangle, but to make you cry, wow. Now, Bach on marimba, that's something that can be just stunningly gorgeous.
Do you practice the keyboard instruments as much as you might practice cymbal?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to. You have to. Especially when it comes time to taking auditions, the competitive nature of it is such that literally, I got to the point where I was thinking Rocky IV montage. Siberia training before his big fight with Drago, grow the beard and just, you got to train. You got to be like this Olympic athlete for months. You get kind of mean to people and you're like, leave me alone, I got to practice. You get into this zone because you're under so much pressure that you have to be comfortable and trust that your training will deliver when you're feeling incredibly nervous, incredibly anxious. You got to be, so that requires a lot of training. So absolutely, I mean, I play, hours on each instrument. A good day for me practicing when I was preparing for this audition was about 12 hours of practicing for 7 days a week. A bad day was about 8 hours. That was my short day, because there's just so many instruments. 4 hours on the snare drum. Well, now I got to play everything else, xylophone, marimba. So it's many hours on all these instruments. It has to be there, or else you won't be able to execute.
When I did one of these pre-concert chats with the timpanist in the orchestra, John Greeny, who's right over here, by the way.
There he is, in his tails. Making me look bad, dude.
He illuminated something that I'd never thought of before, that as a percussionist, a lot of the time, you might just be sitting there counting rests, waiting for your moment to come in. So this is a dumb question. Do you ever practice counting rests?
Oh, absolutely. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes there's so many rests, literally hundreds of bars, that if I didn't study that part of the music that I'm not playing as much, if I get lost by a bar, I'm done. I'm done. I'm the only one who has to get up and play that triangle part or cymbal part. This has happened to people, and myself a few times. You stand up, I pick up my cymbals, and there went that part. Put the cymbals down, sit down, and everyone sees that. Like, why did he stand up and set it back down? What was that about? Even if you don't know the music, something wasn't right about what just happened, And you don't want to be that guy. And I'm not one of 50 violinists that, if you flub something, I mean, these guys work incredibly, and they play a million more notes than we do, and my God, but if they flub, they got 40 other players playing the same thing. Don't tell him I said so.
This is on videotape, my friend.
Shoot. Anyway, but you know, John's the timpanist. He has to play that solo in the second movement of Beethoven 9, or it's a problem. It's a big problem. There's, you know, I have to play that cymbal crash. You know, in some symphonies, Bruckner, like there'll be one cymbal crash in a symphony that's over an hour long. You know?
Much the same with the Liszt concerto we're hearing tonight.
Liszt concerto, yeah. Mike's sitting there for most of the whole beginning, about 15 minutes worth of music goes by before he has to get up and play his first crash cymbal. And so sometimes, most of the time, every time, we have to study the whole piece, whether or not we're playing everything. We have to know it as well as the concertmaster. You know, I mean, you have to just, I can't get lost counting to 984. I just can't.
I imagine this is the stuff that nightmares are made of for percussionists.
Can be.
Yeah.
So I have to know the piece, the tunes so well that I can tell, oh, this chord progression is happening now. This melodic line on the flute is happening now. That means we're at rehearsal B. You know, this cue, these trumpet parts are coming in now. Okay, that tells me I'm at this certain part of the piece. And then eventually the counting does come into play. It's like, you know, the train's coming down the track, so you got to jump onto it. I got to start kind of moving along with it a little bit, or else it's going to, you know, just, I'm done. So you have to like start running along with the train, with the music. You have to start counting. Subdividing is the big boy word we use, subdivision. So you start counting at that point once you know, okay, I got a few bars until my entrance. I'm standing up, I'm holding my cymbals. Dear God, okay, I'm on this count. Okay, good. You know, so, and if you have a great conductor, you know, you'll get a cue, which helps, but sometimes you don't because they're busy managing everything else too. So we have to study. Even if our part is like, you know, 10 notes long, we have to know everything that's going on before and after that very well, or else it's not fun. That's not fun. Yeah.
I've got a few minutes before we have to wrap up. If anybody has any questions for Sergio, I think he'd be willing to accommodate. Yes, right here.
Which instruments do you like? Which instruments do you enjoy?
The instruments I enjoy most, maybe, is whichever one I'm playing at that time.
Oh, come on.
Is my honest question. I'm serious. It's, I'm drumming all day long. Whether it's the tambourine or the cymbals or, you know, the xylophone or the chimes, they're just fun to me. It's great. Yeah, give me anything. I'll play it. You know, tune cowbells. Let's do it. You know? But yeah, it's a great question. Some people want to know. Literally, it's, you know, I could always find my role with that particular instrument within the music that makes it really fun for me. So.
Got a question over here?
I don't think you said, but what was your previous symphonic experience before you got here? And how many auditions have you actually taken?
How many auditions have I taken? That's like asking me my age. I don't know. You know, I'll say it was above 20 auditions. And my symphonic experience before coming here was, well, I went and trained in school. I went to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and I was there for 6 years. I did my bachelor's and master's, and while there, you play in the school's orchestra often, and there's reading orchestras that don't perform. You just read through repertoire. That's important to know. And then you perform, of course, and you play your recitals and all this stuff. You also go to summer festivals. You know, you have your Aspen Festival, Tanglewood Festival, Music Academy of the West, and, you know, just a bunch of it. So, you know, you go to festivals as a student. And then after school, I was fortunate enough to land a position with the New World Symphony in Miami Beach. That's founded and led by Michael Tilson Thomas, our little neighbor to the south. And so I was there for 4 years, and when I completed my fellowship with them, I won this job that same year in November. I finished in May with New World. The audition here was in November, and I got fortunate enough to get this position here. So there it is.
Okay, I got a question here too.
Did you actually have to tune those cowbells yourself? And if so, how did you do it, and where did you get the cowbells?
Awesome question. No, I did not have to tune them. They come pre-tuned, and we rented them from a company in California that rents these tuned cowbells, also known as Umglocken. Mahler, we use them in Mahler symphonies and stuff. But they have fixed pitch based off of the size of the cowbell. A certain size of the metal being forged creates a certain pitch, and they decide, you know, if this needs to be an F, does it sound like an F? No, it's close. It needs to be, you know, a little smaller, a little whatever, to get to that pitch. So it comes in the process of actually creating the cowbell, the instrument that they tune it And we rent it for, we have our own here, but we don't have 2.5 octaves worth, because that doesn't exist.
I imagined you going out into a field,
Yeah,
and ripping them off the
Vienna.
cows.
I flew to Austria and scoured the landscape for cowbells. But yeah, so we rent those. Or in the case of City Noir, the last concert of last season, we had City Noir and Rite of Spring on the same piece, and I played inside a cage of tuned gongs, if anyone saw that. And I had 24 gongs that were tuned to specific pitches. That it was the same company we rented. They specialize in renting these instruments that not every orchestra owns, because we rarely would use those. So that's how we do that.
I think I got time for one more, Sergio.
We got up here.
When you think about the auditions again, how much time does each person get in the audition? And of those 20, 30, 40 instruments that you know how to play, how many do you end up actually playing during the audition?
Great questions. Depending on the round. The first round's usually pretty short. You get about 10 minutes total getting on, getting off. So we would choose a list of repertoire that would be maybe 6 minutes long total. And so in the first round, you only have about 6 to 7 minutes to make the impression, then you're done. Hopefully you got through. If you got through the second round, there's a lot less people, so that you could expand what we ask them or what you get asked to play. So that can be like a 15-minute round. And you get put through the ringer a little bit at that point. They start asking you to repeat certain things, playing it certain different ways, throw curveballs at you. And then in the final round, the screen might come down, the music director's there, and then you have about a 30-minute round, sometimes more, where, this answers the next question, where by the end of that, you've played everything. You've played every instrument. So yeah, when I got my position here, I played everything. Drum set, timpani, bass drum, snare drum, xylophone, clock, everything. You do it. You get through it. You might not play everything that's on the repertoire list that they sent you, because they send you a list with about, 50-something excerpts plus a couple of solos. You might not go through everything, but you're going to get close to that. You will touch every instrument. We need to know if they can play everything. You have to know. So you get put through the ringer.
If you happen to have a maybe young person in your life who's been drumming on their couch with a couple of recorders, or our burgeoning percussionists, we have videotaped tonight's pre-concert chat, and we'll put it on the All Classical Portland website, which is allclassical.org. Might be fun to share this chat with somebody in your life. I want to thank Sergio for such an entertaining chat today, and thank you for coming. Sergio Carreño.
Thank you very much.